All right, welcome everybody to Artful Tuesdays. Today we have, we have Luc Travers again. So welcome, Luc.
Hi, Kirk.
Excited to have you here. And we're going to be talking, we're going to be doing, I guess we're going to tease people a little bit because we're doing a surprise by art, but we're not bringing it back full time. Sorry, everybody. And I have actually gotten people that say they really like the show, but we're not going to do the show full time, but we're going to do this episode for a variety of reasons, which we'll talk about, but we're going to do surprise by art. So Luc is going to surprise me with a painting, and I'm going to surprise him with a poem based on the topic Righteous Defiance, which was actually our second episode when we did all those episodes. I think it was 2 summers ago now. And
wow.
It was a long time ago, right? And so
pre-COVID days. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, don't yeah. So don't bring traumatic experience to my life again. So so we're going to be talking about that. But Luc, also, you've been working on something. I did want to actually chat about this real quick. So you've been working on something really big. I'm sure, hopefully, everybody knows about it. But just in case not, what is your big news?
New book. Yes. Oh, of course I'm going to share. And it's called Stories in Paint. It's a big coffee table art book with 50 artworks, 50 paintings from American museums that have been the most successful on the tours I've given the past 15 years. So if you want a coffee table art tour with me, that will be coming out in the spring.
I like that. Coffee table art tour. So so this is something, can people order it right now? Like, because I know you had pre-orders. So
I did
right now, no
for
orders.
Kickstarter. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got one. So I'm going to get the first copy signed by Luc. If you did not get that though,
go to touchingtheart.com.
Touchingtheart.com, and they can go ahead.
They can sign up for the mailing list and they'll be alerted to the book. You'll be alerted to the book.
Okay. So it is going to come on sale. You'll be able to buy it. Mm-hmm. I've said this before. I love coffee table books because it announces to the world stuff you're interested in whenever people come over. And I like that.
Yeah, I'm hoping it will be something that people will have out, like a jewel in their home that they want to share with others. And then they flip it open and then you get to have an art experience with somebody that you care about there.
I love it. Now, by the way, I just want to read this to you, Luc, because you got a comment already by Tom Novak. And Tom says, Luc, I went to the National Gallery in London a few weeks ago, and I've got to say that it wouldn't have been anywhere near as stimulating if it wasn't for your techniques. Thank you. So start the show off with some praise to Luc. So thank you, Luc.
Appreciate it, Tom.
Okay. So thanks, Tom. And great. So thank you. ARCUK has put it. Oh, by the way, ARCUK, remember there is a conference, March 28th. I think it's like March 28th to like the 3rd or 4th, something like that, of April. So make sure you check that out. Ayn Rand Center UK, London. Go have fun, meet a lot of
I wish I could go.
I know. My passport was stolen. So otherwise I would have gone. Yeah, I was stupid. I don't want to talk about it. So, all right. So speaking of stuff, let's talk about the topic.
Stolen passports.
Yeah, stolen passports and my hatred of the government, that I don't want to deal with them. So let's talk about righteous defiance. So you chose this topic again to re-bring it up. What inspired you to do that? Why righteous defiance?
It was a 10-hour car drive from Wilmington, North Carolina to Florida, where the day after the takeover, the invasion of Ukraine, and I was just listening to what was going on, all the stories that are happening in Ukraine. And something that kind of started astonishing me is, I heard beforehand how Putin was just going to roll over Ukraine and it was going to be quick. And I started seeing more and more stories of Ukrainians standing up to him. And starting with the leader who was like offered to hey, US is saying, hey, we'll get you out of there. And you gave me that quote a couple nights ago. Where was it? I don't need a ride. I need ammunition. Mm-hmm. And that kind of standing up for their country, I started seeing more and more again, like stories about the Vitaly Klitschko, the former heavyweight boxer, and his brother, who's now the mayor of Kiev, staying there and fighting and seeing more and more of the people of Ukraine not fleeing, but wanting to fight for their country. And that got me to reflecting more and more on a topic that, we spent time talking about, righteous defiance. And it made me want to explore art and explore poetry more that had to do with that, to see what are the variations and different kinds of way that standing up for something, how does that look? How's it embodied? And maybe, Kirk, we can talk a little bit about some of the examples in history or in literature of those kinds of images or those kinds of moments of righteous defiance. Because I went back and listened to the podcast we did, and I encourage anybody who's interested in the topic or surprised by art, the righteous defiance. It was great episode and great artwork, great poem combination. But we didn't really talk much about what it means beforehand, of this concept of being defiant for a righteous reason. And I'm curious, Kirk, if, maybe what does this idea mean to you? Or are there any historical images or literary images that come to mind of somebody being defiant for their values, for what they think is morally right?
Yeah, I mean, I think literature abounds with it. I mean, the one image, because it's an image and it's a movie, that comes to mind that is famous in the popular culture is the "You shall not pass," right? Gandalf. And that's his kind of, to me, that's what I always think of as righteous defiance. Is it's not about winning or losing necessarily. It's about drawing a line in the sand and saying, you will not pass this. I will stand here. Horatius at the gate, who sent, me and in these by myself, I'm going to, or, Leonidas in the 300. We're going to fight.
Yeah. This is Sparta. Yeah.
This is Sparta, right? Yeah. And it's like, it's what we are. It's who we are. This is my line. You're trying to cross that line and you might roll over me, the Tiananmen Square guy. That's righteous defiance. Like, it's not about you're the most beefy, muscular, guy necessarily. I mean, these guys are way more beefy. They got 4 tanks, and yet the power of just standing your ground, I think, is something that just people don't appreciate. Just how powerful it is for just some small person. Like, we don't know what happened to this guy. He's probably gone, right? He probably lost this battle, but think about the inspirational power of this, right? The inspiration of, like, man, this guy can stand up to 4 tanks. I can't stand up to my teacher and tell my teacher I'm wrong, or he or she is wrong. That, I think, is something we need a lot of in this culture, in any culture. It's an important thing to have, this idea of standing up for what you believe in.
Yeah, I like you've got some great historical references that you're going there. Sparta and the Tiananmen Square anonymous guy, and I think when I think of maybe some more there's one image of a combination of literary and historical. Is I remember in Hong Kong when China was going to take over Hong Kong, that there were protests and people were protesting, singing from Les Miserables. And
I was going to share this one.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is what
yeah.
You mean? Yeah. This is like
do you hear
the
the people
anthem
sing
of Ukraine right now, right? It's like, do you hear the people sing? Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so this got me to thinking. I think when we talked about righteous defiance last time, I thought of it maybe a little bit more on a narrower scale of what is it if, standing up to a teacher or standing up to some authorities who might be going after something that's precious to you. And this is, I think, one of the first times in my life that I've really thought about what it could be to stand up in a war like this. And I started kind of imagining, what what if something like this happened here in the United States? What if there was an invasion here, like there is going on in a relatively free country like Kiev, where there are Western values that are starting to sprout, coming away, trying to pull away from Russia, and so I started thinking, imagine, would I be somebody who would take up arms? Would I be somebody who would stay and fight? And I was just reflecting on what it could do to my life. I started kind of empathizing a little bit with what's going on in Ukraine. And there have been, I mean, I've never seen social media used like this before. I mean, I was talking to somebody about, what it was like the news they'd get from the Vietnam War, and you get war correspondents, and they would you get it like a long time later, and so you never really knew what was happening. And here, of course, there are probably layers of propaganda and so forth, but we are getting from the people on the ground who were there the kind of a real-time view that we can kind of connect with. And there's one particular image that really drew my attention, and I'll share that image. And this is a minister of parliament from Ukraine, a 30-year-old woman named Kira Rudik, who shared this photo, and I think it pretty much went viral. There in her home with her, patio and her litter box and her bare feet, like she's going around all day in her makeup and
yoga
her blouse
pants.
And yoga pants.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, just like a normal American, like you would think this might be American girl, right?
Yeah.
Just, some girl in America about to go to yoga class.
Exactly.
And then you see, like, is that Kiev in the background or that building or whatever?
Yeah.
Something like that, which is being bombed currently.
And she's got to pick up a Kalashnikov.
Yeah.
So this kind of image drove home the point for me of it's something that is taking over a normal, healthy kind of life. And it gave me the idea of, okay, wow, this could be, what if this could happen? Because if throughout my life, I felt like I'm living in a peaceful Western country where I get to choose my career, choose the people I want to associate with, criticize the government, whatever I want to do, all these freedoms that I have. And so seeing an image like that really starts to think, oh, there are more threats to that than in the world than I thought there were before. It drove that point home to me. And I started exploring a few artworks, and I'll share one with you, not the main one I want to share, but kind of a typical one, another kind of historical literary example. And I want to see if you can guess who this might be that I'm going to share here.
I don't know. It's like, Kirk, you say you're a
let
literature
me
guy,
put you on the spot.
and then you do this, and I screw up. And no, it's all right. Put me on the spot. Let's see what I got.
Yeah.
Let's see what I got.
So here.
By the way, Tom, I saw your note. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's a good point. Oh, okay. So what's in his hand? So he's got.
It's a broken sword in his hand, and chains is in his other hand. And this is a sculpture I saw at the Louvre, which I think for me really captured like this defiance, and this defiance for a very moral reason. This is.
Can you tell me the era before you tell me what it is?
Roman.
Oh, this is Roman.
The statue is 19th century French.
So this has to be.
But it's the story set in Rome.
Yeah, this has to be Spartacus.
It is Spartacus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ha! I did it. I just like I needed some kind of era because thinking about 2,000 years. But I don't like it. So is the broken sword, is that part of it, or did it just break?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if there's something that I don't know Spartacus' story that well, other than the Kirk Douglas movie, and I don't know if his sword, and that was obviously after this.
Yeah.
So I don't know if his sword breaks. But anyway, what were you going to say? I apologize.
No, well, the fierce expression, the strength, that this is obviously a heroic nude, and he is going to fight. We see that, and this is kind of that furrowed brow is what I've really associated with, righteous defiance facing off against an enemy, standing up to them, and ready to strike at them. And so, that's I bet that's probably the way a lot of people view kind of like a heroic defiance. You think of Michelangelo's David or other things like that.
Well, okay. I was going to say, like, what was interesting, I don't know if it was just me looking into it, but there was this part of the defiance I saw in his face. What I emotionally also saw was like, I'm going to do something. I'm ready to do something. Don't mess with me. But I saw like a tinge of fear, right? Like, and I think that's part of it, right? Is it's not, right? What is the saying? Courage is not the absence of fear, but it's the, something about the action regardless of fear. I don't remember the quote off the top of my head.
No, that makes sense.
Something, but like, and when you did a close up, I was like, oh, wow, he's a little scared. And I think that's one. I mean, the great thing about great art is how wonderful it can capture nuance that we sometimes don't think. Like, you can have both. And I don't know if that was the artist's intention. I just saw some of that. And I see some of that, in like the David, of course. Like, there's a little bit of fear because he's standing a giant, right? Like, you should be afraid. It's rational to be afraid a little bit, right?
Yeah. So, I think you're absolutely right. You can't have courage without knowing that there's something that you can lose, that you're going to be afraid.
And courage is not the absence of fear. It merely indicates the ability to overcome fear. Thank you, Daniel.
So I want to share a painting with you that I saw after this 10-hour drive to Florida.
Is this the official one?
This is going to be the official one. And I don't know if I don't have the super chats up or anything, so I don't know if
there was one thing that Tom mentioned, so maybe we can, because this is an interesting thing to discuss real quick, of the opposite. So he mentions, during COVID, I saw more examples of righteous compliance than righteous defiance. I don't know what you think about that, because you were asking about, would I be defiant and, in the face of something major? Now, COVID, of course, people would argue, is not bombing your house. Like, that's different. So it's an interesting thing, because I know when I think about righteous defiance, for me, when COVID happened and, in my life, what I did March of 2020, like, I didn't care that, I cared that people were dying, but that was not the issue for me. I got on my Harley and I went on and Facebook. I was like, where are the protests? I'm going. And I couldn't do it. And the only thing I could do, because nobody was protesting anywhere in California. Right. And so only thing I could do was I went to a place that was open for outdoor, ordered a pizza and a beer, and then went past curfew in a park that was closed and took pictures of myself and and I was a protester of one. People on Facebook called me the P word, like, oh, you're so brave to do, like, they made fun of me. They did all this thing about like how stupid and cowardly I was for doing this. And like, oh yeah, you're such a big, brave guy by doing this in a park. But it's like, but I couldn't find anything. Right. So, this righteous defiance was absent. There was no righteous defiance anywhere in the world when this happened. And to me, that was crushing. That was one of the most crushing moments of my life, for sure. That nobody joined me in that at all.
Yeah. And I think what you're describing is maybe, I think part of what my conception of righteous defiance is it's a minority going up against a stronger foe.
Yes.
And
like
that what Tom is saying is a righteous compliance. You're part of the majority and you're expressing anger towards those that are not fitting in with what the rules are, what the establishment is. So that's when I think of, Ukraine and those who are fighting, I think of the overwhelming Russian military force, and they're going to be crushed. And Zelensky's on a hit list, and he's whatever sabotage groups or hitman groups are coming after him. He could be killed at any moment because of this overwhelming force against him, but he still chooses to be there.
Absolutely.
So the artwork I'm going to share, I'm going to preface it by saying This one caught me by surprise because I did not see it as Righteous Defiance to begin with.
Okay.
It did not fit that kind of image that I thought of, like the Spartacus. All right, Kirk, are you ready?
Okay.
And I'll give you a heads up, Kirk. I think you might have glimpsed at this before.
Okay.
But so
then I better get it right. I have no excuse. No, I'm going to pretend like I didn't see it if I did. I'm just
okay. All right. Honest. So let me share my screen. And if you want to start with a quick title, and anybody who's watching or listening, if you want to start with your own quick title in the chat.
So just give it so in the chat, everybody, just put what your title is. Could be 2 words, a sentence, whatever, just real quick. 5 seconds is all you get. Something like that. Because that's all I get. So you get what I get. All right, let's see it. Oh man. You know, the thing that came to mind was like what a kid says, I did this. You know, like or like a cat, you know, like have you seen those memes where like a cat is like pushing it over and it's like, yeah, that's right, I did this. Like it's pride in what I just did. Cool. So let's see if anybody okay, so when you got put it in the chat if you have any and I'll read them if we have time. But go ahead, Luke.
All right. So now I'm going to share it again and I'll have some close-ups for you, Kirk, but what are you seeing that and going on and what are you seeing that makes it feel like she's proud, and what is it that she's done?
It looks like she stabbed this guy in the eye with a sword, like a saber. Like it's not a mess around kitchen knife. This is like a war. It's like even elaborate scimitar that you might just hang up on a wall. It looks like, right? It's ornate. And she's holding it. I mean, to me, it's like she's, you know, when you're posing for a portrait, right? And you're just kind of like, you know, back straight, you know, she seems proud. It's interesting what the old lady nurse is doing as well. Like, it seems like my first impression is she's like checking in on this girl, like how you feel after doing this. And she's concerned. And, you know, I can imagine the next moment is her discovering that it's not, that she's, you know, fine. And that, she, you know, she has, you know, I just saw this in Band of Brothers where one of the captains or one of the, you know, people in charge was saying to Blythe, this character who's terrified of war. He says, the sooner you realize that you're already dead and the sooner you become, this is in World War II and like trying to be a soldier, the sooner you can become a perfect soldier or like a good instrument of war, essentially, you know, who can kill without remorse, without pity, right? Like that's what I see with her is like, this is war and I have no remorse because, you know, this is done. Like you started this and I finished it. That's what I see in her face. I could be way off, of course.
So you're seeing a kind of certainty, of acceptance of whatever this, the need that drove her to.
By the way, we have a couple people who announced
decapitate.
Yeah. Do you want to hear some of these?
Yeah.
Titles?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay. Gene Walters says Lady Assassin. Tom has a couple. He has Meerkat and I don't know exactly what he means by that. Gene Walters says, come get some. And then I think there's one more. No, never mind. I think that, yeah, they have other comments, but those are the only titles that I could get. I don't know, like Meerkat, what that has to do with anything. But sometimes people say random stuff in YouTube chats. I don't know. Unless there's some context to Meerkat that I don't know.
So I've got a couple more questions for you regarding this one. Is she dressed for battle?
Definitely not battle. I mean, she looks like she mourning, just because of all the black, but it's like a very fancy, fluffy mourning, like MOURN, right? She's in mourning, not it's mourning. You know, and the turban is interesting, like what part of the world she's living in. And although she's not like covering her face, so this isn't like, although maybe it's India. I don't know what, I'm not super familiar. But yeah, I mean, just all the fluff and flare, it seems very puffy, right? It's like a puffy down jacket, but to me, it seems very fancy. And she's got these jewels in here.
Yeah.
She's not ostentatious though, but they seem like they're not cheap. Again, and the sword seems like this is a family heirloom to me. That's what I. Yeah.
So yeah, very fancily dressed. I'm glad you're noticing the jewels. I'm counting on her dress. She's got gems. She's got these earrings. The image is kind of dark. The painting's dark. Maybe needs a little cleaning, but you can maybe tell it's kind of, the light is glinting off of the dress by how satiny it is. So she is wearing the finest. Very different than her comrade there. Now,
wait a second.
Yeah, what are you noticing?
Is that just the head? And there's no body? So, okay, that changes things a little bit. I thought she so I just didn't realize that was just a head. So this is a bag. This lady brought a bag with a head in it. Now the question is, did she stab the head, or did it already have a sword in it?
Okay, so I'm looking at the table here, the table edge, and I'm wondering, it does kind of look like it's going through. I'm wondering if the sword is maybe behind the table edge.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
But here's a follow-up question. Did she cut this head off?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think so. Because there's not a drop of blood on the woman.
There's not a drop of blood on her.
If they wanted to, and he looks dead for a day. Right? Like, look, he's decayed. He didn't just die. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know a lot about decay, but he's green. Like, do you turn green the moment you're dead? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Maybe it takes it's like a week old.
So here's another question for you. Looking at her friend here, who has got a bag and maybe about to bag the head, what could she be saying to the fancy lady who has the big sword?
Yeah, it definitely changes. Like, because I had kind of thought of it as like she just did this thing, right? But it's more like this was done a week ago, and maybe she's saying something like, "Here you go," or no, because she's so concerned. She seems concerned about her. Like that's the look I'm getting, is like a look of concern.
Yeah.
Maybe she's concerned about what's going to happen to her afterwards, now that this has happened, right? Like, she killed her husband and now they're going to gun for her or something. I don't know. I get concerned. I can't think of what she's saying. Something like, "Are you going to be okay?" Or
I can see that.
Something like that.
No, I think just to summarize what you're saying here, Kirk, which I think is spot on. She's decapitated this man, whoever he is, and there's a kind of acceptance of this fact, of this, that she's become a killer in her face. There is no concern about it. She's not weeping about it. She's looking at it straight in the eyes, or looking at us straight in the eyes. And there is concern on the part of her friend there beside her. Now, do you want to hear the background story?
Let me, yes. And by the way, everybody, thank you for your comments. Keep them coming. They're good comments. But yes, let's hear some background for this story.
All right. So the background story is one of an army that is about to overtake a group of people, and they're encamped outside of the city, and the powerful general of that army is going to lead the onslaught the next day or sometime soon, and they're going to be defeated. Those in the city are going to be defeated.
Sounds like young woman.
It kind of sounds like that, doesn't it? Yeah. And the young woman in the city says she can save her people, And what she's going to do is she's going to present herself to the general of the opposing forces, to the General Holofernes,
Okay.
as a tribute.
Mm-hmm.
And when she gets there, instead of sleeping with him, she kills him in his bedroom. Now, this is a famous subject of stories, and I'll show you just one example of, okay, this is kind of gruesome. This is kind of gruesome. I just want to give everybody a heads up. But one famous painting depicting this is here.
Okay, I've definitely seen this one.
Yeah, Judith beheading Holofernes. And there she is.
I mean, like, yeah, but I love this, like how it's almost dispassionate, right? It's just like doing a job. Like, you know, it's like he's a pig and they're just butchers, just cutting the pig for dinner. That's it. Like,
yeah.
I mean, they're definitely struggling because he's struggling, right? But it's wow. So that this woman who's actually doing the cutting, that's the woman with the turban here.
Exactly.
And yeah, so like now, so where does this story come from? I don't know if I really know.
The Bible.
This is a biblical story. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like maybe what's happening in your painting is, I mean, obviously the defiant moment is the decapitating to fight that it's like you're using the ruse of sleeping with somebody to, harm the enemy. And even though it's just spitball and you're going to lose, you're going to do it anyway. Right. And she does this and then she comes back with the head. And I could see that, she displayed this maybe, to show her work. Like, and then she even dressed for the occasion, right? Like that's kind of, and maybe she's mourning her city knowing she's still going to lose. This is just me kind of interpreting the painting with a little bit of context, knowing she's still going to lose, but it doesn't matter because she did harm to the enemy and she's going to make it as harmful as possible to the enemy. So
a couple of things with the painting on the right, the one that I saw at the Ringling Museum in Sarasota, Florida, after my 10-hour drive with BBC Radio in the background. I saw it and I didn't see defiance in her face. I didn't see defiance. And so that didn't catch my attention. It didn't seem heroic. And you're right, there aren't any blood splats. But there's one little clue that tells us is kind of right after the decapitating. And it's that her servant is about to put the head in the bag. Oh, she's about to put it in the bag. Yeah. Okay. I interpreted that wrong. Yeah. No. But that's, sometimes they're helpful clues. Sometimes they're not. The reason why she's dressed nicely is because she's meant to like look fancy for Holofernes to sleep with him. But I spent some time talking about this painting with a friend, and what they really highlighted to me was what you saw in her face, this kind of acceptance, like you talked about the soldiers in World War II, just accept the fact that you're dead already, and this is a new reality. Now you're ready to fight. And what I see in her face now is as she turns to us, she's not looking at the enemy anymore. She's turning to us, to somebody who could be sympathetic, and saying, this is my new reality. Well, this what about what I've got to do? Yeah. And what about also like, what are you going to do? Yeah. Like almost like a challenge. Like, this is this is my defiance. Are you with me or not? I can see that. And so when I saw that painting, and it helped me understand the expression of another person that I'd seen that puzzled me as well. And that was the expression of Kira Rudik, the one of, I'll show it to you again. So, by the way, it's Naki and Lifter
says, I have a similar picture on my wall by a different painter. First time though, through objectivism, I understood what kind of art I wanted. So glad that you're finding art that you love, Nakian. Great. Okay, here we go.
So there's a similar kind of, not quite sure what's going on, or like a somewhat puzzled expression. No fierce furrowed brow like you might find on Spartacus,
Mm-hmm.
but rather something that's a little bit more just accepting the facts that are going on. So here's a final comparison that I'll share with you. And kind of looking at you. I've accepted a new reality. I'm picking up a gun. And this is not what I usually do.
Yeah.
And I like the way you phrase it. Are you going to join me?
Yep. What are you gonna do? I mean, this is like almost like World War II American propaganda posters. Like, like Uncle Sam wants you, know, or Lady Liberty with leading the people. And what are you gonna do? Are you gonna join the fight? Are you gonna join liberty and be defiant against the forces that are trying to stop liberty? Yeah. I mean, that's eyes. I mean, I guess I don't know enough about her story, the one on the right with the turban. I don't know if she's actually fighting for liberty or just fighting for her sovereignty, which is
a righteous cause to fight for.
Which is a righteous cause in
fight
itself.
For her people, fight for her country. Yeah.
Well, I guess the complicating thing is, I mean, this is biblical, so they were probably both kind of bad, but I don't know. I don't know the story, but yeah. But anyway, you're fighting for your freedom, for your sovereignty to live your life.
Yeah, you have a sacred value that you're fighting for, and that's the way that I'm viewing that. The Judith and Holofernes. Yeah, and that's the way I'm viewing Kira Rudik.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's my contribution.
Yeah, I like that painting, by the way. That was great. I don't think I've ever seen that. I mean, I've seen the other painting, of course. I think that's who's the painter for the one where they're actually in the act of killing her.
So that's a famous one. That's by Artemisia Gentileschi. Gentileschi. Yeah.
And then the other one is, so the painting that you surprised us with is which one? The main one?
You know what? I don't know.
Okay, we'll put that.
Yeah, we'll put it on later.
Or somebody knows, like you can look it up for us.
It's at the Ringling Museum of Art. So if you Google Judith and Holofernes at the Ringling Museum of Art. The Ringling is in Sarasota, Florida.
Florida. Oh, okay. So this is when you saw at, that's right. You said that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
At Florida. That's awesome. And you got to see that in Florida. And
no, it surprised me. I turned the corner and
there
first it didn't grab me, but then speaking through it and connecting it back to the things that had drawn me towards what was going on in Ukraine, it became meaningful.
Okay. So I am going to share a short dramatic monologue from an ancient Greek play. And I'm thinking I need to set it up a little bit first, because so this is from Antigone. And
I like that play.
It's her defiant monologue, or thought of that way. Just so you guys understand, and I don't want to go through the whole, everything. There's a lot in this play. Free trade, by the way. Thank you so much for the 20 SEK. I'm not sure what denomination or where that's from, but it's not dollars, but thank you for your contribution. He says, loving the artwork and the discussion. Thank you. So Antigone is a play written by Sophocles in the 5th century BC. And it's about a Theban princess, a young Theban unmarried princess whose uncle is the new leader of Thebes after her brothers, who were supposed to be the kings of Thebes, they had battled and killed each other in a civil war before the action of this. And just so you understand, Antigone is Oedipus's daughter. So that Oedipus, as you all know, he's Oedipus of Colonus, or Oedipus Rex from the famous Sophocles play. He's the king of Thebes. His daughter's Antigone. So what we have here, and I'm not going to go into all the detail, but what we have here is Creon the king. It has been asking who buried the of the two brothers, one is a hero because he fought, essentially you could think of it, he fought for Creon or for that side of the fighting. And it just slipped my mind. I think it's Polynices who fought against.
Sounds right.
So it's Polynices and Yuri something, and I just forgot. But anyway, so the two brothers is all you need to know. One of them is pro, the Creon forces. The other one was anti. She is the sister. She wants them both buried. But there's been a decree by Creon of no burying the other brother. And she sprinkles some dust on him, the enemy brother. She sprinkles some dust on it. There's a messenger that comes to Creon. Someone's done it. And he's like, who did it? And Antigone's basically like, here I am, right here in this. And then he says, they go through an interchange. And he says, and still you had the gall to break this law. And this is what she says about her breaking the law, which was his decree. She says, of course I did. It wasn't Zeus, not in the least, who made this proclamation, not to me, nor did that justice, dwelling with the gods beneath the earth, ordain such laws for men. Nor did I think your edict had such force that you, a mere mortal, could override the gods, the great unwritten, unshakable traditions. They are alive, not just today or yesterday. They live forever, from the first of time, and no one knows when they first saw the light. These laws, I was not about to break them, not out of fear of some man's wounded pride, and face the retribution of the gods. Die I must. I've known it all my life. How could I keep from knowing, even without your death sentence ringing in my ears? And if I am afraid to die before my time, I consider that a gain. Who on earth, alive, in the midst of so much grief as I, could fail to find his death a rich reward? So for me, at least, to meet this doom of yours is precious little pain. But if I had allowed my own mother's son to rot, an unburied corpse, that would have been an agony. This is nothing. And if my present actions strike you as foolish, let's just say I've been accused of folly by a fool. And then there's a long interchange between the two. But we'll just stop there. So this is her dramatic monologue of defiance, of saying this is why she's giving her reasons for why she did it.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, so I know you've read this before, and these types of things can be a little confusing sometimes, but what do you, and we could talk about why it's confusing, but I don't know how interesting that is, but like, what do you get just on a first impression?
First impression, your laws are not my laws.
Yeah.
Your laws are not my laws. You impose something on me. Sorry, I don't recognize it. I have my own gods that I follow, my own principles that I follow, my own rules that I obey, and they are not the ones that you imposed.
Yeah, and it's and I'll bring it back in a second, but I'll cut it between. So I think that's a really good, synopsis of it, right? And I think one thing she's calling for that's important to remember is she's calling for higher moral laws than just what a king decrees. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's not merely that it's hers. She's abiding by something higher, and it is higher. So one critic of this, and this is something that in Peikoff's, so we've done this on this show, by the way, on Ayn Rand Center UK, we've done an Antigone with Ann Cicolella a while back. We did this play, so go check that out. But one of the great commentaries on Antigone as a character is she is in love with the impossible and has a fury in her heart. And that I think you can even sense some of this here. Nor did I think your edict had such force that you, a mere mortal, could override the gods, the great unwritten, unshakable traditions. So things that are, again, above these like temporary, momentary pieces of legislation that Creon puts into power, that there's something universal that has to be. And in this case, the universal is but had I allowed my own mother's son to rot, an unburied corpse, which is, so the way that, and one thing that made me, after talking to you a couple of days ago, the thing that like made me really think about this was, look, it's very likely that Ukraine will eventually lose, right? And this is a story that could be performed in Ukraine as like modern day, like this, like I can imagine, I don't want to name specific people because I don't want to wish this on them, but a leader of Ukraine who's dead, who's killed, and Putin says, we're going to leave their body there and you're not going to do anything. And that's it. And so like, sometimes we think these things are not universal. These ancient Greek stories and poems are not universal, but to me, like this Ukrainian situation, this is so real. It's so right now, right on the news, that this could happen. We may never hear about it, and it probably will happen, something like this, and we just won't hear about it. And that's why this is,
No, Kirk, I'm glad you're bringing out the universality of it. And I'm trying to think of specific little instances that I've heard, and maybe the audience has also seen little snippets of stories of everyday individual Ukrainians standing up to the occupiers for some reason or another. I think there's one video that went around of this this elderly woman who goes up to a Russian soldier and just tells him, "What are you doing here? Why are you here?" and just interrogates him and defies him, and he's got no idea. He's just implementing Putin's rules and laws, and she's saying to him essentially, "These are not the laws that I follow, so get out of here." And this makes me think also, a lot of has been said about Ukraine being the invasion of Ukraine is the first huge military conflict in Europe since World War II. And thinking back to World War II, Antigone was a play that was translated and adapted by a French author during the occupation of France. And at first it was allowed by the Nazis, but then they started seeing that this was clearly a statement of defiance by
just the performance of the play.
That's the performance of the play by this adaptation. And I wish I could remember the French author who adapted it, but it was clearly intended as an adaptation to help rouse righteous defiance among the French resistance to the Nazis. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, if Russia is occupying much of Ukraine and those parts that are holding out, or those parts of it that are still resisting, that you get a performance of Antigone to show that there are things worth fighting and dying for. And in that text that you shared, she will die. She wants to die if it's for doing what is right, if it's for breaking those laws.
Well, and so I was going to thank you, Daniel's Jean Anouilh. I don't know how to pronounce this.
Yeah, Jean Anouilh. I'll help you out with the French pronunciation.
Thank
Jean
you.
Anouilh.
Yes. Yeah. So that's right. You speak a little bit of French.
I speak a little bit of French.
So are you fluent in French?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's wonderful. Thank you I should have just put it to you to pronounce. But so so I think like having the play itself be a defiance. And there's I'm going to just say this basic story, and I don't remember exactly, but there's American movies. There's an American movie that was made, I think in the 40s, about this kind of thing as well. I think it might have even been a comedy of some sort, but this type of idea of like using art to, be your righteous defiance itself, like that is powerful. And, so the story is about, and I love your grandmother example, because I think people, when they read Antigone, don't realize that Antigone as an unmarried woman means that she's like 13 years old. And in the play, right? Like in ancient Greece. So when you think about like it's from an artistic and real, it stresses the defiance aspect. Cause it's one thing if like if I'm
like Spartacus, like you, like,
yeah.
Built like a tank.
That's different. If I'm like going to fight somebody and it's like, well, he's got some, but it's like when it's a frail little girl and she's like, you shall not pass, or this is, and she's like speaking to Creon, the tyrant, the egomaniac tyrant who's like controlling everything. And she's like, no.
A young woman like Judith who kills a general, or Kira Rudik, 30-year-old young lady in the Ukrainian parliament who's got yoga pants on and who picks up a Kalashnikov. So I like that.
Great stress.
The stress of the defiance through the atypicality of the actor there. Yeah. I've got a question for you. So take the painting of Judith, who's just decapitated Holofernes and is now looking at us and asking us the question, can you imagine what scene that might be for Antigone? Because I'm thinking of the difference, and Antigone's talking to her antagonist. She's talking to her enemy. She's got her furrowed brow. She's got her Spartacus brow staring at Creon. What moment would you imagine being the one where Antigone is pausing, looking at us and saying, this is what I'm thinking is a moment.
So I think at the beginning when Ismene, her sister, is telling her not to do this thing, right? And so I think that, and then she's saying, well, I'm going to do this because this is the right thing to do. Sophocles as an artist is creating a character to kind of be a bane, just to kind of, again, further emphasize her, because Ismene sympathizes, but she asks her to compromise, right? She says, don't do this. And these are uncompromising women. So I think what they're basically saying to each other, to us, to Creon, to everybody is like, and this is what Righteous Defiance is this is the line, uncompromising, no further. Right. And that's what I mean by you can't pass this. You can't, like, I will take this action in Antigone's case. Right. So like in Ukraine, they're defending attackers. Mm-hmm. But in Antigone, which I think is great, is like she's taking a positive action. Mm-hmm. And she's not just like defending something of her attack. I mean, she's defending her in the speech I read, she's defending her action. Yeah. But in the play, she actively buries. I mean, it's actually just a sprinkling of dust on the stage.
But it's the ritual. It's the ritual.
But it's the ritual of it. Yeah. And she does it in defiance of him. And I think that is very powerful in the fact that it's, look, they're both powerful. I don't know which one's more powerful or whatever. It doesn't matter. But
now here's what I'm thinking is, in the play, and we don't get a moment where Antigone has a painting like the Judith painting where she looks at us. But I could imagine if there was a painting to be done where she sprinkles the body of Polynices and buries him and has committed the act of defiance and then turns to the audience and looks at us and says, do you support me?
Yeah.
Do the same.
Well, and I think go ahead. I was going to build on that if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think like what I would paint is she does not do this like in secrecy. She does this like an open light of day. So this is described by the messenger. And so I would see almost like she's looking right at the messenger as she does this. Yeah. Right. That's how I would
the messenger who conveys to Creon that the breaking of the law has occurred. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, someone broke the law. And he's like, I don't want to tell you who it is. And it's, it's your niece. Right. So it comes out to be. And yeah, so I think that's how I might look at the painting, is that she does not want to hide this. She's not like, I'm going to do, I mean, what's that? So like in the play or the poem by Tennyson, Rizpah, where the old woman goes to, in secret at night, she goes to take a bone from her son that was been hung for some silly mishap, basically. And she does it at night, but she doesn't like hide it, if I remember correctly. she doesn't do it in the open as much, but she just goes at night in the windstorm and goes to pick a piece of bone and bring it back to bury it. And but when she's confronted, she kind of, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've read Riz Paul, but I think that kind of thing happens, right? And that's a form of defiance too, for sure.
To do it out in the open. Yeah.
Yeah. And doing it out in the open, and just, and now when she's doing it over and over again, right? She's like doing it every day. She gets like one little bone or something. So yeah. Righteous defiance. And I think there's some inspiration for all of us in these heroes, because one, like I was saying earlier, the idea that this won't happen, or that these ancient stories aren't real, or they can't ever happen, or they're not important because they're about religious ceremonies. This is happening right now. There is someone in Ukraine who is facing this type of situation where you're going to have an enemy of the state, and Putin is going to say, let the body rot, and someone's going to say no. And that's, or hopefully,
and I hope that there will be lots of Judas there too.
Yeah.
That will act for the sake of what they think is their righteous cause.
And use that as, inspiration for your daily life, of what you support, what you advocate for. I mean, you don't have to go cut someone's head off today. Not advocating for that necessarily. I mean, if it's the right action, then okay. But, like, stand up for what you believe in. When you see what was the quote? So this, again, the Antigone, she was in love with the impossible and she had a fury in her heart. And that's about being an idealist and having justice at the forefront of your heart. And Leonard Peikoff, in the Discovering Great Plays book and in the lecture series it's based on, says that that's Ayn Rand. That's a definition. That's a great line about Ayn Rand. And she was in love with the impossible and she had a fury in her heart. And that's what it means to be, in love with justice, and say that this is the right thing to do. Sometimes it, is standing up for someone that needs, just a verbal standing up for them, because that's the right thing to do. So that's what I got.
That sounds good. And speaking of standing up for anybody, if Kira Rudick has been doing it openly on Instagram, you can find her there. And if anybody has any other artworks of Righteous Defiance that speaks to them of Righteous Defiance, I'd be very curious to hear about them. If you want to join the Stories in Paint Facebook group and share some of those with me, I'd be happy to see them. Or the Surprised by Art Facebook group. I think
Stories in Paint is good because we're not as active on Surprised by Art. So yeah, Stories in Paint, share your favorite. I mean, there's also so many good modern movies. I think Westerns, there's a lot of Westerns, Gary Cooper standing up against the, High Noon, against all the bad guys. And he's making us, there's so many images of this, and we need to prop this up and say, this is a good example of righteous defiance to bolster our souls and give us some strength. Because I think that's what we need. When we talk about
bolster our souls and give us strength. Yeah. I like that phrasing.
Maybe that's a good way to end it, because we need to stop the righteous compliance and have more righteous defiance in the name of justice, in the name of rational justice. So there you go.
Thanks, Kirk.
All right. So thank you everybody for joining us for Artful Tuesdays. Make sure you check out Luc Travers, LUC Travers, TRAVERS, touchingtheart.com. And there's one super chat. So thank you, Gene Walters. He said, I'm starting Stories in Paint, the sequel fund here. Thanks for the show. Thank you, Gene, for your participation. And Gene and everybody else, as well as the others who did super chats like Free Trade. Thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you next time.